Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to consider something profoundly unsettling about human interaction, something that has existed for millennia yet remains as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago, the presence of the narcissist in our lives. These are individuals who, whether consciously or unconsciously, manipulate, dominate, and disrupt the very order of our relationships. Now, imagine for a moment Jesus, the embodiment of moral clarity, courage, and unwavering integrity, confronting such individuals. How would he respond? Would he yield? Would he fight back with aggression? Or would he exercise a higher form of strength, one that transcends mere reaction and embodies truth itself? In examining this, we uncover a truth that is often overlooked. Dealing with narcissism is not about defeating the other person. It is about mastering yourself, confronting chaos with order, and asserting your own dignity without succumbing to resentment. Today, I want to explore how Jesus handled narcissists, not as a historical curiosity, but as a guide, a blueprint, for how you and I can navigate the same challenges in our modern lives. Because the question is not just what Jesus would do, but what we are willing to do when faced with manipulation, deceit, and the corrosive influence of narcissism. When we encounter narcissists, it is easy to focus solely on their behavior, their arrogance, their manipulation, their relentless self-centeredness. And yet, to confront them effectively, we must look beyond the surface, because their presence in our lives is not just a challenge imposed from the outside. It is a mirror reflecting hidden aspects of ourselves. Narcissists have an uncanny ability to provoke reactions in us that we might otherwise suppress, to illuminate the shadows of our own personality that we prefer not to see. When a narcissist criticizes, manipulates, or belittles, they are doing more than attempting to control the situation. They are revealing the parts of us that are vulnerable to such treatment, the parts that crave approval or fear confrontation. This is not merely an uncomfortable observation. It is a profound opportunity for growth. To engage with this mirror effectively, we must cultivate an awareness of our own psychological structure. The narcissist forces us to ask difficult questions. Why do I react this way? What insecurities am I allowing to dictate my response? What unresolved conflicts within me are being triggered by their behavior? By examining these questions honestly, we uncover not only our weaknesses, but also our potential for moral and emotional strength. This is where the encounter with a narcissist becomes transformative rather than merely adversarial. Furthermore, understanding the mirror effect requires discipline. It requires that we do not immediately lash out or retreat, but pause, reflect, and recognize the patterns within ourselves. We must resist the temptation to blame the narcissist entirely for the discomfort they cause, because while they are the catalyst, the resonance exists within us. Here lies a subtle but essential truth. True mastery over interpersonal challenges begins with mastery over oneself. A narcissist may provoke chaos, but it is within our power to respond with order, with composure, and with clarity. In this process, the narcissist becomes, paradoxically, a teacher. They expose the cracks in our character, the areas where we are overly dependent on external validation, where we fear confrontation, or where we fail to assert ourselves appropriately. By confronting these truths, we are afforded the rare opportunity to strengthen our character in ways that comfort and ease never could. The mirror they hold up is unflinching and often unpleasant, but it is essential. Avoiding it leads only to repeated patterns of frustration, resentment, and diminished self-respect. Engaging with it, however, cultivates resilience, insight, and a deeper understanding of the human psyche. Ultimately, the presence of narcissists in our lives is less about their pathology and more about the potential they awaken within us. They compel us to recognize and confront our vulnerabilities, to examine the parts of ourselves we might prefer to ignore. By approaching these encounters with humility, self-reflection, and moral courage, we transform a difficult interaction into a crucible for personal growth, a mirror not of the narcissist alone, but of our capacity for self-mastery, integrity, and enduring strength. When dealing with narcissists, one of the most common mistakes people make is believing that strength is demonstrated through aggression, confrontation, or domination. This is a misunderstanding of what true strength actually entails. Strength is not the capacity to overpower another. It is the ability to establish clear, unwavering boundaries that protect your integrity while maintaining your moral and emotional equilibrium. Narcissists, by their very nature, push, manipulate, and test limits because they perceive vulnerability as an opportunity. They are drawn to uncertainty and the absence of structure, and in such environments they can dominate. Therefore, the antidote to narcissistic influence is not retaliation, but the disciplined enforcement of boundaries. Boundaries that delineate what is acceptable and what is not in a manner that is firm, consistent, and unyielding. Establishing boundaries requires profound self-awareness. You must first understand your own values, needs, and limitations. Without clarity on what is non-negotiable for you, any attempt to resist a narcissist will be inconsistent and easily overridden. When you define your limits clearly, you are not merely imposing rules on another person. You are asserting your own identity and dignity. This act alone is a demonstration of power far greater than confrontation, because it is rooted in principle rather than emotion. Narcissists often respond aggressively to boundaries because they encounter resistance they cannot manipulate. In such moments, maintaining calm, composed firmness is not only strategic but transformative. You are, in effect, signaling that your sense of self is inviolable, that your moral and emotional framework cannot be subverted. The enforcement of boundaries also demands courage. It is not easy to say no, to resist manipulation, or to disengage when provoked. Narcissists are adept at provoking guilt, shame, and self-doubt in others. They rely on emotional coercion to erode the confidence of those around them. To maintain boundaries in the face of such tactics requires inner fortitude and a commitment to long-term integrity over short-term comfort. It is a disciplined practice of asserting your needs while refusing to internalize the narcissist's attempts to destabilize you. This is not arrogance. It is the conscious exercise of self-respect and moral clarity. Furthermore, boundaries are not static. They are living, adaptable, and require constant reinforcement. A boundary is only meaningful if it is consistently observed, even under pressure. Every compromise without necessity chips away at your authority and encourages further encroachment. Conversely, steadfast boundaries communicate strength without aggression. They teach the narcissist that their usual strategies of manipulation are ineffective and that your equilibrium cannot be disrupted. Ultimately, setting and enforcing boundaries is a form of personal liberation. It transforms interactions with narcissists from chaotic and destructive exchanges into opportunities for demonstrating self-mastery and resilience. By insisting on ethical and psychological limits, you cultivate an environment where respect is earned, integrity is maintained, and the corrosive influence of narcissism is mitigated. True strength is revealed not in overpowering others, but in asserting yourself with clarity, consistency, and courage, thereby preserving your dignity and shaping your life according to your highest principles. When we confront narcissists, the natural impulse is often to respond with hostility, avoidance, or defensiveness, yet history, psychology, and profound moral insight suggest an alternative, compassion. Now, before one dismisses this as weakness or naivety, it is essential to understand that compassion in this context is not sentimental, nor is it an abdication of self-respect. True compassion is a deliberate, courageous act that requires awareness, self-discipline, and moral strength. It is paradoxical because it appears soft, yet it is among the hardest virtues to practice in the face of manipulation and egocentric behavior. Narcissists, by their very nature, operate from a place of deep insecurity and unmet psychological needs. Their aggression, manipulation, and self-centeredness are often masks for vulnerability, fear, or unresolved trauma. To approach them with compassion is to recognize their suffering without becoming entangled in it. This is a subtle but crucial distinction. Compassion does not mean tolerating abuse, excusing harmful behavior, or surrendering your own boundaries. Instead, it is an acknowledgement that the human condition is universally flawed, and that even those who cause pain are themselves shaped by suffering. Compassion functions as a tool for maintaining equilibrium. When we respond to narcissistic provocation with anger or resentment, we reinforce their power over us. We become reactive, chaotic, and entangled in their world. Compassion, in contrast, allows us to remain centered. It transforms our interactions from battles over ego and control into exercises in self, mastery, and moral clarity. In a sense, it is a shield as much as it is a bridge. It protects us from the corrosive effects of manipulation while providing a space where reason and principle can guide our responses. Moreover, compassionate engagement often yields outcomes that confrontation alone cannot achieve. When we recognize the humanity of someone who seeks to dominate or manipulate, we subtly disrupt their assumptions about control and superiority. A narcissist thrives when others are reactive, submissive, or morally compromised. Compassion, paradoxically, is a form of resistance because it refuses to meet cruelty with cruelty. It asserts that moral strength is more powerful than coercion, that understanding and clarity can subvert manipulation more effectively than anger or retaliation. Practicing this form of compassion requires constant self-reflection. One must constantly check the balance between empathy and self-protection, between acknowledgement of another's suffering and preservation of one's own integrity. It is neither passive nor effortless. It is an active, conscious choice, and that is precisely why it is so powerful. It transforms an interaction that might otherwise be toxic into an opportunity to demonstrate resilience, moral clarity, and the capacity to respond to adversity without moral compromise. Ultimately, compassion in the face of narcissism is a demonstration of higher strength. It is not about pity, it is about principle. It allows us to navigate complexity with wisdom, maintain our dignity, and confront manipulation without surrendering our ethical or psychological foundation. In this way, compassion is not weakness but a strategic, principled, and profoundly courageous act that reflects the highest form of personal mastery. In dealing with narcissists, one of the most challenging aspects is the chaos they introduce into our lives. Narcissists thrive on disorder, their actions are unpredictable, their emotions volatile, and their strategies often designed to destabilize others. They excel at creating confusion, exploiting uncertainty, and provoking reactions that reveal vulnerability. To navigate such interactions successfully, it is crucial to recognize that the true battle is not with the narcissist alone. It is with the chaos they represent and the internal disorder they seek to awaken within us. Order then becomes a principle, a framework, and a strategy for maintaining integrity, focus, and psychological resilience. Establishing order begins with the self. The narcissist's influence is strongest when we are reactive, emotionally unsettled, or unsure of our values. They exploit these gaps to manipulate and dominate. By cultivating personal structure, clarity of purpose, consistent routines, and clear ethical boundaries, we reduce the areas in which they can operate. This internal order is not rigid or authoritarian. It is disciplined, deliberate, and reflective. It allows us to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively, to confront the chaos externally while remaining stable internally. In this sense, order is a form of self-defense as well as a moral stance. Chaos and order also interact on the social level. Narcissists often disrupt relationships, organizations, or communities by sowing conflict, exaggerating grievances, and undermining trust. The natural human response to such disruption is emotional escalation, which only amplifies the chaos. Maintaining order in these situations requires an intentional approach, clear communication, consistent enforcement of boundaries, and a refusal to be drawn into petty disputes. It requires discernment, knowing when to engage and when to withdraw, when to act and when to observe. By imposing structure in our interactions, we neutralize the narcissist's ability to manipulate and regain control over the environment in which we operate. Furthermore, confronting chaos with order is an act of moral courage. Chaos represents not only the external influence of the narcissist, but also the internal temptation to respond with fear, resentment, or impulsivity. By choosing order principled, measured, and strategic, we resist the erosion of character that often accompanies prolonged exposure to manipulation. We demonstrate that stability, self-discipline, and ethical consistency are more powerful than coercion and intimidation. In effect, we transform chaos into an opportunity for growth, clarity, and reinforcement of personal values. This principle extends beyond the immediate interaction with the narcissist. When we cultivate order in our own lives, through self-reflection, personal responsibility, and adherence to our highest standards, we create a foundation that is resilient to external disruption. Chaos may come from external sources, but order begins within. By embodying order, we not only protect ourselves but also influence those around us, setting an example of stability, integrity, and principled action in the face of manipulation. Ultimately, the confrontation with a narcissist is less about defeating them and more about asserting order over chaos, internally and externally. Chaos tests the strength of our character, order reveals it. By maintaining this discipline, we navigate adversity with clarity, safeguard our dignity, and demonstrate that structure, principle, and moral courage are the most potent tools against manipulation and disruption. When facing narcissists, one of the most underestimated tools at our disposal is silence. Society often conditions us to believe that speaking up, defending ourselves, or asserting our position immediately is the mark of strength. Yet, in encounters with manipulation, verbal reaction can be a double-edged sword. Narcissists are highly skilled at exploiting our words, twisting our statements, and using our reactions against us. Silence, therefore, is not passive, it is strategic. It is a conscious choice to withhold energy from the chaos that seeks to destabilize us, allowing us to retain control over both the situation and ourselves. Silence functions as a form of power because it removes the narcissist's leverage. They thrive on engagement, on eliciting responses that confirm their sense of superiority and control. By refusing to react impulsively, we deny them the fuel they need. This is not avoidance or cowardice. It is a deliberate, disciplined act of self-preservation. In silence, we create a buffer, a space in which reflection, clarity, and strategy can emerge. We are no longer reacting to chaos. We are observing, understanding, and preparing our response from a position of strength rather than vulnerability. Moreover, silence communicates something profound without a word being spoken. It signals composure, self-control, and moral authority. Narcissists often rely on emotional manipulation to provoke guilt, fear, or anger in others. When they encounter silence in place of reaction, they confront a mirror they cannot shatter. In that stillness, the narcissist may become unsettled, frustrated, or even introspective because the expected dynamic, the provocation, the engagement, the escalation, has been disrupted. Silence, in this sense, is an unspoken declaration. You do not dictate my state of mind, my emotions, or my principles. Practicing silence requires courage and self-discipline. It is difficult to restrain the impulse to defend oneself, especially when confronted with provocation, insult, or distortion. Yet the power of silence lies precisely in its restraint. It allows thought to precede action, analysis to precede reaction, and principle to guide behavior. By cultivating this discipline, we protect our psychological integrity, preserve our dignity, and refuse to be drawn into the narcissist's manipulative patterns. Silence also functions as a form of reflection. In the pause between provocation and response, we gain insight into the narcissist's tactics, the structure of the interaction, and our own vulnerabilities. This awareness enables a measured, deliberate response when engagement becomes necessary. It transforms interactions from reactive chaos into opportunities for strategic, morally grounded action. Ultimately, silence is far from weakness. It is a profound demonstration of self-mastery. It asserts control without aggression, preserves dignity without confrontation, and converts potential manipulation into an arena for observation, understanding, and strategic choice. In a world dominated by those who seek to provoke, silence is not empty. It is powerful, disciplined, and principled. Confronting narcissists is not merely a challenge to be endured. It is an opportunity for profound personal growth. The adversity they present forces us to examine ourselves, confront uncomfortable truths, and develop qualities that might otherwise remain dormant. Narcissists often provoke frustration, anger, and resentment, yet within these reactions lies a potential for transformation. How we respond to their behavior determines whether we are diminished by the encounter or strengthened by it. Adversity, when approached consciously, becomes a crucible in which character is forged, resilience is tested, and self-mastery is cultivated. The first step in transforming adversity into growth is recognition. It requires acknowledging that narcissistic behavior is not a reflection of our inadequacy, but a reflection of the other person's pathology. Once this is understood, we can shift our focus from blame to self-reflection. This shift is critical because it empowers us to examine our own reactions. Why do certain behaviors provoke us so intensely? What insecurities or vulnerabilities are being triggered? What patterns from the past are being repeated in the present? By answering these questions honestly, we gain insight into ourselves and uncover areas for personal development that might have otherwise remained hidden. Growth in the face of narcissism also demands the cultivation of resilience. The narcissist's tactics often aim to destabilize, to provoke emotional overreaction, and to erode confidence. By learning to maintain composure, set firm boundaries, and respond with clarity, we build psychological and emotional strength. This resilience is not merely defensive, it is proactive. It allows us to navigate complexity with balance, to assert ourselves without aggression, and to maintain dignity under pressure. In essence, adversity becomes a training ground for self-discipline, courage, and strategic thinking. Another dimension of growth involves moral and ethical refinement. Narcissists frequently test our principles, challenging our commitment to integrity, fairness, and compassion. Each encounter presents a choice: to react impulsively and compromise our values, or to act deliberately, guided by principle. By consistently choosing the latter, we reinforce our ethical framework, deepening our sense of responsibility, accountability, and moral clarity. The narcissist, in this sense, becomes a catalyst for moral development, forcing us to live consciously rather than reactively. Finally, adversity with narcissists teaches us the profound lesson of self-mastery. It underscores that the only domain we can fully control is our own mind, emotions, and actions. We cannot change the narcissist, but we can shape our responses. Each interaction, each provocation, each attempt at manipulation is an opportunity to exercise discipline, reflection, and courage. Over time, these small acts of self-mastery accumulate, transforming encounters that were once draining or destructive into a source of empowerment and insight. Ultimately, the presence of narcissists in our lives is not merely a source of difficulty. It is an invitation to grow, evolve, and strengthen our character. By approaching these challenges with awareness, resilience, and moral clarity, we convert adversity into a powerful vehicle for self-improvement. In confronting their chaos, we cultivate order. In resisting manipulation, we cultivate strength. And in navigating their behavior consciously, we cultivate wisdom, dignity, and enduring personal growth.